A third of the time, you're going to be freaked out. A third of the time, you're going to be really excited. And a third of the time, you're just going to be a grinder, right? Let's just do the next thing. The Marine Corps is a lot like that. When they teach you to shoot, they tell you this: front sight post, rear sight aperture, slow, steady trigger pull to the rear. And I think in the real world, most people don't aim, which is why the Marine Corps, if you ever wondered this, like in a battle, how can 10 guys defeat 100 guys in a firefight?
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. Have another amazing guest today. His name is Tim Goering. I'm pretty excited. Tim's a personal friend of mine, but he's also somebody that I look to as a trusted advisor and a coach. And you'll learn more about that as we get to know him a little bit. But a little bit about him, some of the cool things about him. One, he's a former Marine helicopter pilot. I guess they say once you're a Marine, you're always a Marine. But he's Marine helicopter pilot, former bank president, wealth manager, and now a very successful entrepreneur. That's really what I'm looking forward to hearing him talk with you guys about. So, Tim, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Matt.
All right, show's over.
All right, that was easy.
You know what, man? This is going to be a fun one because you got a great personality. You're like a great speaker. So, to anybody that's watching this, whether it's today, next month, or 2 years from now, this is one, please stay to the end. There's going to be so much information. There's going to be so much that you can learn. There's so much value that Tim is going to deliver. Tim, I want to frame this out a little bit. We're going to go back and we're going to talk about your early life a little bit before we get to what you're doing now. But there's some things happening around us, right? This is, we're in the middle of October 22. We know we're in a recession, or some people don't want to admit it, but we're in a recession, and 23 is supposed to be a bad year for people. And what you do and what you're going to talk about is really something that is helpful to everybody, because it's a mindset where you coach people on in ways where they can choose the outcome, where they have influence over the outcome on what happens in their life financially. So we're going to get into that, but not yet. Do me a favor. Start us off by telling us how you grew up. Like we heard everything that I just listed off that you have done, but what brought you to the point of joining the Marines, and what was your early life like?
All right. Well, if you're looking for one of those rags to riches stories, or, the really hard beginning, this isn't going to be that story. And I always admire those stories. And, sometimes I think early in my life, I probably even tried to make it out like my life was harder than it was. But my parents have known each other since kindergarten. And they grew up in a little town called Clinton, New York, way upstate New York. And they live in a house that my mom was born in. That house was built in 1878. And as far as I know, somebody from my family has lived in that house ever since then. My parents still live there now. My parents are still married.
Yeah. But your parents have known each other since kindergarten?
Kindergarten. Yep.
Oh, wow.
And it's a big family joke that my dad wasn't the favorite then because some other kid could draw better turkeys. But, what are you going to do? He earned his way in. So they were high school sweethearts. He went off and played hockey at Brown. She went to Oswego. And when they graduated, my dad joined the Air Force. Vietnam was just starting to cook off, and he was a real intellectual, and he prided himself on that. After Brown, he went and got his mathematics degree or master's degree at USC. And so I had all these like smart family growing up, and we grew up moving every 3 years. So I think a lot of my personality, we vacationed in Clinton, New York, which, by the way, is not a vacation hotspot. Hamilton College is up on the hill. My great grandfather was the first mayor. My dad was the fourth mayor. I think there have been 5 or 6 mayors. So it's a lot of family legacy there. But we moved around my whole life. And my dad's whole mantra when we were moving around was get involved, compete, get involved in sports. And if you're involved in sports, then you'll make friends. And if you don't like who you are, then this is a great opportunity to reinvent yourself every single time we move. Right. So take everything you didn't like about yourself wherever we lived last. Stop doing that. Take everything you liked about those kids from wherever we came from and do more of that. And luckily, he gave me lots of practice. I think I probably moved 26 times in my
26 times.
Yeah, some of that self-inflicted because I enlisted in the Navy and then went in the Marine Corps, so I kept it going because I idolized the man. I never told him that growing up, but I knew that I wanted to find a girl to marry right out of college, get in the military, have a great adventure, and then retire someday and live happily ever after. That was just the plan I was on.
We'll get to that later.
Fair enough.
That could have gone like either way, because there are people who have that kind of, they're moving around a lot, and maybe the parents don't plant the right seeds of how they could process that, and it becomes like a negative that they carry along. But what your dad did was kind of brilliant, to turn it into a positive, and you actually had that mindset where moving was an opportunity.
And I've used that ever since. But you're right. I saw that a lot with other kids. We were always around we lived a lot in military base housing. So a lot of the kids were new to town, and some became introverts because of that. And some became extroverts because of that.
Yeah. I mean, you can imagine the damage it could do to somebody, but it's very cool in your case, because I know you well enough to it's kind of cool that you ended up being such a positive, upbeat, happy guy, and you're pretty successful. So it worked out. It worked out. So take us through. So you ended up joining the Navy first, and then you went into the Marines.
Yeah, so let me introduce a little bit of failure there. Right? I had an older cousin, 10 years older than me.
We like failure on the show.
Yeah, me too. That's where you learn, right? You learn when you stumble along the path. So my older cousin went to the Air Force Academy. Everybody in the family thought he was cool. So as a 10-year-old, I'm like, hey, Timmy's going to grow up to be like Tommy. That's all there is to it. He ultimately wound up flying the F-117, the stealth fighters. So he had a really cool career. And then as I progressed through high school, I had all my nominations lined up at the Air Force Academy. But I don't know what was wrong with those guys. They failed to accept me to their school. So my whole life I've been telling everybody that's where I was going to go. It was heartbreaking. And I mean that. It was really heartbreaking. Wow. But luckily for me, our team had won the state championships in soccer my junior year and then again my senior year. And I was the captain my senior year, co-captain, just in case Kurt Reiber ever listens to this, right? He was up there with me. And because I went, we had a good soccer team, and I had gone to the Naval Academy soccer camps because my dad was stationed at Andrew Air Force Base right down the road. I decided, last ditch effort, I'll just call the coach at the Naval Academy and see if there's anything he can do. And they recognized me from the camps. And there were a couple of kids in my high school that were already at the Naval Academy playing on the team, one of which was the captain of the team. So people knew Timmy Goering at the Naval Academy, but it was a great conversation. I'll never forget the guy's name. It was Ensign Scotty Eckert. So Scotty, if you're listening to this, thanks, man. You did a lot for me. But what he told me is, he said, Tim, it's a little late in your senior year to be getting you straight into the Naval Academy. Would you consider going to the Naval Academy prep school? To which I replied, yes, sir. Absolutely. I know Danny Altamari went there, one of my best friends to this day. I'll go. And he said, well, Tim, all I need to know is if we send you there, will you quit? I said, oh, no, sir. Absolutely no question about it. I won't quit. You get me in, I'll fight my way out. So the idea was go to prep school for a year. And I'll never forget it because we still, as a kid, we ate dinner as a family. So I got to sit across the dinner table from my dad, and I got to break it to him. I said, Dad, I'm giving up on the Air Force Academy. Just like that, sport. You're giving up. He thought he was the great Santini of the Air Force. So he was mean back then. He's a really nice guy now. And I said, I'm not giving up. I just decided I'm going to go to the Naval Academy instead. So that brought him right into chastising me, right? Well, you're just going to switch, And I said, actually, I've already been accepted. Because Scotty Eckert literally said, let me make some phone calls. And he said, I'll call you tomorrow. He called me the next day and he said, if you'll go to the prep school, you're in. And I'm like, you got to put that in writing so I can throw it in front of my dad, which he did. And it was one of those shockers. Like my dad just couldn't believe that I set him up like that. He almost cried. Didn't ever see him cry until his father's funeral. So he is human, but didn't shed a tear on that one. But it was fantastic because it was right down the road from all my friends. And it was nowhere near what I thought it was going to be. I got there. It was harder. academically, there were some really smart people there. And I thought I was smart in the public schools in the DC suburbs. Turns out I'm not. I'm a regular old guy. But yeah. Well, so I got to the Naval Academy and it was a lot of fun. James Webb became the Secretary of the Navy. And he decided that anybody that wants to be a Marine has to go to Marine Corps OCS over the summer. So the Marine Corps is part of the Department of the Navy. A lot of people don't know that.
I was going to ask you how you went from the Navy to the Marines. Thank you for clarifying, because that was confusing to me.
It's a little known fact, believe it or not. But those ships, the Navy ships, are what takes the Marine Corps to that amphibious landing that ultimately freed the world.
Right? Wait, the Marines are part of the Navy?
They're part of the Department of the Navy. They're their own branch, but the budget, the flight school, the training, the academy is all Navy. Yes. Yeah.
Do you go through the same like boot camps? Like, is it really the same?
No. The boot camp, everything is different as soon as you declare you're on the track to be a Marine. Much harder track, right? Just keep wanting my life to hurt more.
Right.
Air Force Academy, let's go to the Naval Academy, make it harder. Naval Academy, let's go to the Marine Corps, let's make it harder. You think that's hard? Try getting married, right? So I tried everything to make my life harder. And as Top Gun came out in the mid '80s.
This was around the same time?
Oh yeah. So best thing ever, wearing one of those white uniforms with those movies, telling the nation, hey, these guys are special. I would have never told anybody that, but if they wanted to believe it, I wasn't going to talk them out of it.
Can you sing? What was that song they sang in that movie in the bar? Tom Cruise and Goose.
Never close your eyes.
Yeah, you can do it. Okay, it's part of the boot camp training.
Yeah. I think everybody had to give it a try. Matter of fact, it's a funny story. I almost went Navy Air instead of Marine Corps Air because they have a thing called service selection night there, right? So they line you up by class rank, and you go down based on your class rank, and they're like, what do you want to do? Navy Air, Marine Corps Air, jump on a ship, submarine, whatever it is, you sign up for it. Well, the Navy had run out of flight billets the year before. So I'm like, wait a minute, I'm here to fly, right? So if I can't be a sailor in an airplane, I don't want to be a sailor. And so the reason I went to the Marine Corps OCS the summer before was as a backup plan in case I couldn't get Navy Air. Then I fell in love with the Marine Corps. They're very serious people. They're very intense. And I like being around that, even though I smile too much for the Marine Corps. They kept telling me that. But that night, service selection night, the Navy decided to entice people to become Navy aviators. They would give them the leather jacket with the cool collar.
Yeah.
That night. But the Marine Corps is like, you got to earn it, right? So, all my buddies are coming back to the room because I wasn't the top of my class. I'm sure that surprises you, but any of my friends watching won't surprise them. And so they, I literally almost folded and went Navy Air to get the jacket, but I stuck to my guns and went to the Marine Corps instead.
You got the jacket anyway, didn't you?
Yeah, but I got the jacket
like
2 years later. They were all wearing scarves and hats and cigars, thinking they were Tom Cruise already. I had to earn my way into that jacket.
So you were how old at this point? So you went through the prep school, then you ended up in the Marines.
Yeah. So 17 when I started, I guess I was out by 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Yeah, 22. So I'm a young man.
So you're 22. And when you at 22, you were in the Marines, or you were out of the Marines already?
No, when you graduate, you become a Marine on the spot. So you get out of the Navy, you swear into the Marine Corps same day.
Okay. So 22. So most people don't know much about how you even learn how to fly or how one flies. So you I guess you get out, like I guess you're now a Marine, and then you go learn how to fly.
Yeah. Well, the Marine Corps, because they've got all kinds of great rules, right? One of their rules was every Marine is an infantry officer first. So they send you to Quantico, Virginia for 6 months to learn how to be a Marine. So you fight with pugil sticks and you learn to shoot guns and shoot M16s and blow stuff up and navigate through the woods and freeze in the snow of Quantico, Virginia. And after the 6 months, then if you still have your vision, then you get to go to flight school. So then you get to go to Pensacola, Florida, and start living the life on the beaches of the Gulf of Mexico.
So you did that, and how many more years was that? That was 2 years?
So it took me, from when I graduated to get through flight school was probably about a 2-year trek. when you graduate from the Naval Academy, at the time, you owed 5 years after flight school. So it took me 2 years to get through flight school, owed another 5 years on my contract afterwards. But it was the 90s, right? I graduated in 1989. So I had friends graduating college and going to manage blockbusters, right? So I was pretty happy to have a job.
So this is in the 90s. So all right. So now you're flying helicopters. Did you end up going to Iraq?
So the Gulf War broke out in the early 90s, 1990 or 91. And I was in the Gulf of Mexico learning to fly while everybody else was in the real Gulf. And matter of fact, my wedding, I got married in 91, and a lot of the guys couldn't attend because they were already over.
They were there already.
And I did not have the privilege of sacrifice. By the time I made it through flight school and showed up at my first Marine Corps squadron, I'll never forget it because, I'm newly married. We show up on the island of Hawaii, which is a fantastic first duty station out of flight school. And they said, literally the first week, they said, we need volunteers to go over to the Gulf. And in the Marine Corps, what that means is step forward, young man. You've chosen a path. And so, of course, I volunteered. And then I went home and I broke that to my brand new wife. And she wasn't really happy with my choice. But that's the way it was. And within a couple of weeks, they stopped. So they weren't sending any more folks over there. So I wound up getting off of it. So most of my time was off the USS Belleau Wood, which is an amphibious landing craft. And what we did is, it's not a secret anymore, so I'm not divulging anything, but we'd spend our time in Cambodia and Laos and Thailand looking for POW remains. That was one big exercise. We called it Cobra Gold at the time, and it was a big secret. We just pretended like we were doing exercises in Thailand, but we'd be dropping folks in to go look for that stuff.
Did you find anybody?
What's that?
Did you guys find anybody?
No, it was mostly remains, obvious camps, those kinds of things. But it's a Marine thing, right? We don't give up on those guys. So that was a big part of it. And a lot of that got done, was wrapping up by the time I joined the squadron. And we'd also spend a lot of time in Korea, South Korea, believe it or not. We did a thing called Operation Team Spirit every other year since the early 80s. We've been doing a fake amphibious landing in North Korea. And so it's kind of funny now that they launch a missile and we get all excited about it. And I'm thinking, well, I was there when we were poking the bear every other year, showing them a show of force, right? If you come south of the 38th parallel, you'll be met with resistance. And that's what that was designed to show.
We're taking the time to go through all this because when we get to the second half of your story, which we're getting close to, it's nice for everybody to understand what you did before you got into the business world. Mm-hmm. What were some of the things that you took out? So you left the military when you were 29?
29, 30, somewhere around there, 1998. So I think that the math.
Now, so you come out, you learn. I mean, you learn. I'm sure tremendous amount of lessons. I mean, what you were able to bring into what you're doing in business, I'm hoping to hear as we go forward. The hard work and the commitment and the things you had to do to get through what you went through in the military, it had to come into play in everything you've done since, right? It's like it's in part of the fabric of who you are. So you leave the military. What did you do after that?
Well, when you were in the military, you're right about that. I think a lot of corporations realize that, not all of them, but there are recruiting firms out there. The one I went through was Orion. So shout out to those guys at Orion. They did a great job. They intentionally recruit former military officers with the idea that if you drove a tank in the Army, you flew an airplane in the Marine Corps, or the Navy, or the Air Force, even, you drove a ship, that you probably have some leadership training and you probably have some, you've got some elements that will be successful in the business world. So what they do is they throw conferences. They recruit me, and then they sent me to a conference in Raleigh, North Carolina, and they had me take a battery of tests, and they came back and said, "You are a sales guy." And I said, "No chance of that. I'm not." Because I had a negative connotation of what a sales guy was in my head. And then I did the interviews, and the first interview I did was with a heavy equipment company out of Greensboro, North Carolina. And the guy's lead question was, "Do you golf?" And I said, "Sir, if you're paying me $250,000 a year, I golf and I'll be good at it." And I think the rest of the interview was easy after that. And when I came out of it, the debrief was, whatever you said to that guy, say that to the next guy. So I became like their sport interviewer. They'd send me around to all the interviews so the companies would be impressed with the candidates. And ultimately, I went with the highest bidder, which was Johnson and Johnson. They wanted me to be the toothpick model because of my blonde hair. No, that's a joke. Selling coronary heart stents. Coronary heart stents had just hit the market, and they were $1 billion company in through the femoral artery up into the artery of the heart, and stainless steel mesh device that they blow up with a balloon that opens your arteries back up. And so I took that job because they said it was the fastest track to six figures. And they were right.
It was?
Yeah, it was. The starting salary was 45 grand. So you had to sell, right? Or start.
Or you're not making anything.
Right.
So now you've transitioned right over to the business world out of the military, and you were picked up by a company who wanted those skills that they assumed you had because you were in the military, and they learned that you actually have an innate ability to influence people. Let's maybe rather than say sales, right? I mean, you do have an amazing ability to bring positive energy to a conversation and to influence people, and there's no sense of anything about you that's pushy or salesy, right? And but like you said, people have a negative connotation of sales, but the reality is it's quite the opposite. Like it's this, and this is really is where I want to transition into what I think the show today is really going to be about. So, ready for this?
Yeah, bring it on.
All right, we're in a recession, even though the government doesn't want to say it yet. Right? We all know we're in a recession. Like, look around, like, kind of feels like a recession, right?
After the elections in November, they'll declare it, I think.
Right, exactly. Inflation's ridiculous, and there's this whole there's this energy around us. Like, we don't know what's going to happen in 2023. And if you watch the news, which I don't watch much, and you pay attention to the fear buzz that's going on around us, everybody's supposed to be afraid, and we know that the Fed is raising rates, and they're not going to stop until they cause pain. That's the goal. They have to slow this down.
Right.
So keep in mind as you take me through your, just give me the rest of your journey, the other few roles you've held. I want you to keep in mind that we're going to go into I'm looking for you to give advice, steps, a roadmap to people that don't realize they can control their lives. They do have control over the outcome, even though we're going to be going into a bad time. Everything you know and everything you've learned in the military, your role in the bank, your role as a wealth manager, and your role in your current firm, as well as I do, that nobody is completely at the mercy of what's happening around you. You can take control and you can do things. So with all of that in mind, that's where let's go down that path. Give us a quick overview of the banking and the wealth management, and then take us into how sales and influencing others really is critical to making it through times that are tough. I know I just gave you a lot, but you get the gist?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a lot. You're right.
You go.
You're right. Fair. Yeah,
Go.
Just press play, right? Okay. So, gosh, I don't even know where to start that. Let me start with something maybe that I'll try to end with it as well, if you remind me.
Okay.
Which is a lot of things happen in life. Adversity is going to creep up on you. And, I've dealt with a lot of people over the years with their past circumstances make them feel like there's not a whole lot they can do, right? And their present circumstances might really be horrible. And my belief is this: you have a choice to make. Life is always a series of choices. You can choose to be defined by your past and present circumstances, or you can choose to frame your own future, right? Your reaction to every situation, every bit of adversity that hits you is your choice. So, the Navy SEALs are famous for that, right? It's raining. Good. We'll learn to train wet. We're out of food. Excellent. We will learn to fight without food. Right? The economy's bad. Oh, awesome. I get to see how to recreate my business in a really horrible economy. It's a choice. And I think a lot of people take the easy route, which is to blame other people, to find fault. And I prefer to take I don't know, maybe it's because it's a buzzkill to me, right? I mean, my version of selling is I just get passionate about the future. I know where I want to go. or I have an approximate estimation of where I want to go. And I would rather take the most reasonable next step in that direction than give up, right? I'm not going to quit. So maybe I learned that when the Air Force Academy rejected me.
Well, your story, interestingly, there was rejection and there were failures along the way, but it's interesting how you did, like when you mentioned what you did with your dad at the table, like it's like you're prepared for it in a way, and you kind of had a plan for what would happen if things didn't go your way. It's that's what I kind of heard you say, even though that's not what you said.
Yeah, I wish I could say I had a plan, Matt. I think it was more something happened to me, and I didn't want to tell all my friends that I was giving up. So I decided from where I am now, I need to adapt, right? I think Darwin said it. It's not the strongest of the species that survives, but the most adaptable to change.
That's right.
Change is inevitable. When change happens, Timmy will change too. Right? Let's make the most of this.
So choosing the outcome is a really important thing for people to keep in mind, right? Mm-hmm. Because we're going into this unknown situation. As much as we know, there's a lot that we don't know. So, I mean, I have moments where I have a business and I have employees and they have families and there's a lot of concerns there, right? So I think about, well, wow, I have my own set of pressure that's self-inflicted because I need to maintain certain standards of excellence. I need to continue to bring in business, and that requires me to not be in a place of fear, worry, and the things that block you from being able to go out there and see what you really should see, which is choosing to see the opportunity that during a bad time, it's actually a chance to take it up a few notches, meet more people, make more phone calls, introduce yourself to more people, because it's actually a great time to service other people who might be looking to make changes. It's a hard thing to get yourself in the mindset of, but you're choosing opportunity. You're choosing to see opportunity. So you deal with a lot of business owners, right? Do you see that mindset is something that they have a tough time with?
Yes. Oh, I think most humans do. You said something that I think makes you a special person. It's Stephen Covey's rule number 2. I think also begin with the end in mind. Yes. You have to decide courageously what you want the outcome to be, and then you have to move towards it. You have to begin, right? A lot of people will set goals that they never really intend to even go after. They're just paying it lip service, or they're afraid to set big goals because they're afraid they might not hit it, right? So they stay in their comfort zone where their family and their friends are. Their friends don't want them to get out of the comfort zone because then they'll have to get out also. And their family doesn't want them to get out of their comfort zone because they don't want to see them fail. They love them, right? And my belief is that if you really want the big outcome, you've got to be uncomfortable most of the time. I think they call that the rule of thirds.
You've got to be uncomfortable.
A third of the time, you're going to be freaked out. A third of the time, you're going to be really excited. And a third of the time, you're just going to be a grinder, right? Let's just do the next thing. The Marine Corps is a lot like that. When they teach you to shoot, they tell you this: front sight post, rear sight aperture, slow, steady trigger pull to the rear. And I think in the real world, most people don't aim, which is why the Marine Corps, if you ever wondered this, like in a battle, how can 10 guys defeat 100 guys in a firefight? And the answer is historically accurate. In a firefight, the overwhelming majority of people don't shoot their weapons. They're afraid. They pray. And the rest of them, a lot of them, are doing this because they're afraid. It's natural. It's a human instinct. However, if you want to trust the other people around you, and this works in business as well, decide what you're going to do, decide what the targets are, and then execute on the back end. Slow, steady trigger pull to the rear, breath control, right? First, you line up the target, but then you chill out and you blur the target. You concentrate on the front sight post, you concentrate on your breathing, and you let the trigger pull surprise you. And then the round goes down range and hits the target.
That's right.
And in life, that's what we need to do. We need to decide, what are the behaviors I'm going to do today that are going to give me a better chance of that outcome tomorrow? And that's where I think most people get confused. They're in too much of a hurry to hit their long-term goals.
That's gold right there. I mean, that really is, that's a really valuable lesson. And by the way, I don't know what you call it, but I used to have this bad habit of when I go to the range, I'm anticipating the shot in my hip. I actually go down. I go
Yeah.
down because I'm anticipating the kickback. So I won't even have pulled the trigger and the gun's going down. I'm like, whoa, shit, I got to stop doing that.
Yeah. You're probably not an Olympic level shooter.
No, I'm getting there. Not
Right.
quite there yet.
Yeah.
You spent how many years working at the bank as a president?
So I was 3 years as a bank president, and then I got recruited by the Bank of New York Mellon to run the wealth management division for the state of Florida. So I moved from a de novo federally chartered bank with trust services, the newest in the country, to the oldest federally chartered bank. What a shock that was.
And how many years did you work in wealth management?
Oh, total 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, about 11 or 12, I suppose. Yeah.
Can you share the story that you shared with me? I've heard it many times about how you learned about sales training. The thing that kind of made you begin to look at another career, which is you left the bank and went to start your own business, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but there was something you told me you were interviewing somebody and you had an experience. You recall that story?
Sure. Yeah. Because it changed my life. I interviewed 600 people in the last 7 years of my corporate career, and I hired about 50. And it was a job. It was a pretty serious job. Starting salary is 150 grand. Expectation was they could make $500,000 to $700,000 a year. Everybody wants that job for obvious reasons, right? And everybody's resumes always look good. There are resume coaches out there. I'm not one, right? But there are I'm an interview coach, but not a resume coach, right? Get somebody to write your resume. I'll talk to you about how to talk to other people. And this lady came in, and she took control right from the beginning, and I'll never forget it because word for word, I've eventually written it down and I use it still. Right? And so she came in and she sat down and she said, "Thanks for inviting me in. How much time do we have, Tim?" And I said, "An hour," which was already putting me in a pickle because I'd usually have my executive assistant interrupt me in about half an hour because I knew in the first 10 minutes whether I was going to move forward or not. Now I've already admitted I got an hour. Darn it. So she led in with, "Tim, there's probably a lot you want to know about me. And there's a lot I'd like to know about the Bank of New York Mellon as well. And if for whatever reason you're not interested at the end of this, feel free to just be honest with me. And I'll extend you the same courtesy. On the other hand, if you're inspired, let's talk about next steps before I even leave so we don't have to wonder. Sound fair?" And I stopped the interview. I was like, what? What a fantastic opening. What was that? And she said, "Oh, that's an upfront contract from David Sandler's book, You Can't Teach a Kid to Ride a Bike in a Seminar." And I'm like, never heard of it. And I love reading. I'm stealing other people's ideas all the time. So I made a note, like, check out the book. And I'm like, well, where do you use that? And her offer was, look, I use it to set expectations, align expectations with everybody at every step of the conversation, not necessarily even a sale, but conversations with other human beings. They've got an expectation. We've got an expectation. And if the expectation we come in with isn't met, we get disappointed. And I'm like, wow, there's the formula for disappointment right there. We both had an expectation. Somebody's expectations didn't get met. So why not align them on everything? So fast forward like 6 months, another one of my producers got infected by this Sandler bug. And she came to me and asked me if I would pay for her to go to a coach. And I'm like, I'm a coach, right? I'm your boss. You got Timmy. What are you doing? So I went to see this guy's class and in Boca Raton. And I started doing math in my head. You remember that old Abe Lincoln quote, "A mind once expanded never regains its original shape," something like that. I'm probably paraphrasing, but that's what happened to me. I sat down. I always thought it'd be fun to be a coach. I love being a search and rescue coach. I love I love teaching people to fly airplanes. That was fun for me. So now I'm thinking, oh yeah, I'd love to show people, how to collect more assets in the wealth management world, how to run a bank. That'd be fun. But how do you make money at that? Right? I've got a lifestyle now. My daughters are going off to out-of-state schools. I got lifetime alimony from my divorce. Oh man, as much fun as that looks, I can't do it. And then I did the math. There's 20 people in that class. I know what she was asking me to pay. I'm like, man, I want this guy's job. So I called the Sandler headquarters, and big mistake, right? Because they introduced me to what the world could look like if I did it right. And within a year, I quit my job. Actually, technically, I retired. They They paid me my pension. They let me exercise my stock options over years. So when I counted all my pennies, I realized as long as I can be successful as a coach within 1 year, and success for me, by the way, shamefully, was I need to take home pay 300 grand or I can't do this. That's a big number.
You know your number.
It's, the reason I say I'm ashamed of it is because I grew up in a family, like I told you, in upstate New York. Wanting to make a lot of money was a shameful thing in my family, right? Doing good for your community, being a patriotic American, that was a good thing in my family. But we never talked about making money. That was embarrassing. Matter of fact, that was one of the things we weren't allowed to talk about, right? Politics, religion, and money.
Why do you think that was? Why wouldn't they talk about money?
Because it's rude. It makes people feel insecure, right? I remember I was raised Catholic, so they passed that little plate around every Sunday.
Right.
And everybody puts money in there.
Yeah.
And my dad would always put this envelope in there, which is very popular. So, I'm curious. It's like, hey, how much money is in the envelope? Mind your own business. I wasn't even allowed to know what we're tithing, for goodness sakes. So it's, I think when you think about it, I learned this when I was interviewing people too. When I would ask them how much money they made, they would lie to me.
Right? It's an assumption. Everybody lies about that.
They do. It's embarrassing.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing when you make a lot of money. It's embarrassing when you don't make a lot of money. And
people don't ask me often, but when it does come up, I don't. My answer is I'm not really sure. The truth is I'm really not sure. So really? I know what my tax returns say, but I don't know actually how much money I make. I own a business that is fairly large, and I have several businesses, so I don't really know. When you own businesses, it gets kind of confusing after a while. So I know the tax returns are one thing, but I don't want to trigger an audit here, so we'll just leave it at that.
Well, you're lucky that you arrived there because, Matt, I think that's I redefined what success is for me. Success is having enough. Now, you got to define enough. Enough to be the richest guy at the country club, enough to tithe to the church or philanthropy the way you want to, enough to pay my bills. I know the gas prices have been going up, but I am fortunate enough to not have any idea how much gas costs right now. When I go to the gas station, I fill up my tank.
That's a great segue to what and thank you for bringing that up because it is a great segue. I took the time to kind of get through all the different things you've done in a way to make sure that when we got to this point that it was clear that you're qualified to answer the questions I'm about to ask because they're important questions.
Am I still qualified?
You're more qualified. Actually, there's things I learned about you that I didn't know, which I are interesting. Like the Navy Marine thing, I didn't know that there was two different. You were in both. For the people out there that do know, which is most people that do know that there's a difference when the price of gas goes up and that there's an impact and that it hurts and you can feel it, and that they might be concerned about what might happen to them. Can you share your thoughts on how they can take control, how anybody can take control of their finances, their success in terms of family and their success in relationships? That's not the success I'm looking to talk about right now. This is financial success. People have a lot of stress around finances when they're not financially free, and the majority of people are not financially free. But you can be freer than you are today if you have a certain mindset, right? And there is, you made a choice to leave what you were doing to go start a business. Yes, you had spent many years building up probably some assets, and you were in a position where it sounds like you could do that. But because the coaching, the value that you bring, and what you're going to share with us right now is you deal with a lot of people, a lot of business owners in your business, and you have a unique perspective. You hear people's opinions. You hear a lot of business owners who are coming to you for sales training because they're not reaching their potential. Maybe they're afraid. Maybe they lack confidence. So everything you do is actually the answer to the question. It's you teach people how to take control and how to actually make more money. I mean, that's one of my takes on what you do. So what do we tell people? How do we lead people to really be more money conscious? Not being afraid and what's about to happen.
Let me tell you why I took the risks, though, because it was easier for me, and I will admit that. When I defined what's enough for me, what I decided is I'm never going to be afraid to go for it because I know I had a safety net, is the way I looked at it. I knew that I could go back home to upstate New York and move into the upstairs apartment, right? My niece lives there right now. She just landed a great job doing forensic like Dexter in Syracuse. So she's living there right now. And I knew in my family it was okay to fail. It wasn't okay to not try, right? You're allowed to lose the game. You're not allowed to not give it your all while you're playing the game. You're not allowed to pout about it afterwards. In my house, whining could get you swatted. That's what we called it, swatting.
That's what you call a good beating, was a swat?
You smacked, right? But you didn't want that, right? You didn't want a check from a hockey player from Brown. And so the idea was, if you first define what's enough, and I don't think of it as me teaching anybody anything, Matt, because my first sales coach beat that out of me. He asked me, he's like, Tim, why don't you quit your big timer job to become a coach? And I said, well, I think it'd be fun to help people make money and help people, have better companies. And he, without skipping a beat, said to me, oh, you're going to suck at this. I'm like, dude, I'm paying you money to coach me. I called him my rabbi. His name was Rich Levinson. Shout out to Rich in Detroit, Michigan. Very successful Sandler salesman. And he said, Tim, I think if you start off by telling business owners that you're going to help them, that you're being condescending. You took the high status, you put them in low status. That's not the way you want to start a relationship. You like to start at equal business stature. So maybe what I do, I think, Matt, is I discover with people how to get out of their own way. So I tell third-party stories. Well, here's how Matt did it, right? Here's how Tim did it. Here's how this other company did it. Does that make any sense? And then they get to opt in. So I'm just taking all my life experiences and I'm asking questions until they decide I have a challenge, number one, that I haven't been able to solve, number two, and that the consequences of doing nothing are unacceptable. So where do we go from here? And if I start with the premise of getting them to own it, right? I tried some things that didn't work and I am where I am and I don't like it. The pain of the current circumstances have got to be greater than the pain of change before any human's going to take any step. So most of what I do with my clients is I do that discovery with them, and then I tell stories about everybody else. So taking back to the money concept, right? I like to just take them through a drill. Like, hey, did you grow up in an environment where it's typically one of three? Money was plentiful, money was scarce, or was impolite to talk about money? And so that's what I start with. And then I just ask them questions. Well, how can, if you grew up with a silver spoon in your mouth, how can that benefit you? And then they tell me some ideas. And I'm like, how can that work against you? Oh, I might come off as a little condescending if I say, well, it's going to cost you $12,000 a year. That's no big deal, right? Well, for some people, that is a really big deal. So you might not want to say it like that. Take them to the same thing with scarce, right? I know a lot of very successful entrepreneurs that grew up in an environment of total scarcity and that fought their way out and became something extraordinary. There are a lot of great stories like that. I think I'm talking to one, quite frankly. Right?
That's the one I identify with.
Yeah, I love that. And I came from that third category where it's not like talk about money, right? And you got to get over that. Now I'm in sales. How can I be successful in sales if I don't talk about money?
So just to add on to that, as anybody who's watching this at any point in 2022 or 2023, you could be sitting there and you could feel like a victim. Mm-hmm. You could feel like a victim. It's easy to feel like a victim because everything around us is kind of programming us to get ready for what's coming, and it's going to be a tough 6 months, year. It'll turn around. Nothing is going to last forever. But I think one of the things you can do right now is don't take the position of a victim. Take the position that, yes, there's things around us that we can't control, but we can control. And you and I you're talking about sales, and this is something, whether you're working for somebody else as a full-time employee or you have a side gig or you're a stay-at-home parent, it doesn't really matter what position you're in. If you choose to not be a victim. If you choose to accept your current circumstance, accept what's happening around you, and then say, okay, well, what can I do if I need an extra $500 a month because food and gas are more expensive? What can I do to generate that? And then kind of come up with an idea. The key is taking action. And so victims don't take action; they just complain and blame other people. But what you're talking about, this was brilliant. It's okay to fail, but it's not okay not to try. Well, rather than complain and be a victim to what's going to happen around us, why not try to do something? Why not try to get ahead of it and see if you can, I don't know, go on Amazon. I have a guy that works in my company who I'm happy that he does this. He gets a good salary, but he wants more money. He sells things that he either gets at garage sales or gets wherever. He sells them and marks them up like 300%. He makes an extra couple $100 every few weeks. That's a big deal to him. I mean, it makes a difference. He's trying. And that's really, that's a sales. To me, that's sales, right? Everything we do with everybody, one way or the other, if you need to make more money and you don't want to be a victim, you do need to get comfortable with the fact that you do need to understand sales is normal. It's not a bad thing. Sales is necessary to help lead somebody else to the conclusion that you have a product or service that they want and that you can provide. And so if you're sharpening your skill and you're developing the ability to help them with that, which means you have to get out of your own way and not be afraid to do that. What you do and the people you work with it's valuable, because at the end of the day, we're all trying to sell somebody something, even our kids. You want your kids to get up for school on time. You're still trying to sell them on it. You're trying to influence what they're thinking. I know I just gave you a lot, but that's what I think is this next year is about. It's about people's mindset, not being a victim and realizing I can go make money if I need extra money. And there are ways if I just think in that mindset rather than I'm a victim.
You're so right. Let me harp in on a couple of key words: try and believe. All right. So let me hit believe first. You said that you've got to believe there's a way. And I think most people, if you want to change what you achieve, you really do have to first change what you believe. You have to admit that it's possible, right? And if you believe, think about sales. Like, think of all those negative, and think of the negative connotations that came up in me as soon as they said, you're going to be a sales guy. I'm like, no way. Those manipulative, lying, cheating salespeople, I don't want to be one.
You train people how to do that.
So I had to change what I believed about salespeople, which is find out what people need, go get it, bring it to them. That should be a noble pursuit. And by the way, I can't think of anything honest, right? If you sell somebody something, they're going to benefit far more from what they bought from you than you are going to make in a commission for what you sold to them.
That's right.
So allow them the luxury of buying it. Listen first. What are you looking for? What challenge are you trying to solve that my product or service is going to put you in receipt of, right? What pain is it going to relieve? What pleasure is it going to put you in receipt of? And then, and only then, do you sell it to them. And then you're not all those manipulative, lying, cheating, crazy things. But it starts with that belief. Believe it or not, if you believe your product or service is worth it, you have an extreme amount of leverage in the negotiation phase of your sale. If you don't believe it, they'll know. It'll be obvious on your face. It'll be, yes.
You can feel it. You can see it on their face. You can hear it in the tone of their voice, the tonality. Like, that lack of confidence is, wow, is that powerful? Or conversely, having the confidence. Actually, the word I use, people have always told me I'm good at sales, and I will tell you that I have, until I met you, I had no sales training. I had never done anything. I think I read a book or two, and I took some of the things that made sense to me from people I knew. But what I had was passion.
Yeah,
it was passion. It was like if I was in I'm in the IT business, so when I talk about it, and I know the way we provide service, and because I believe that we're good at it and that it's a great experience, when I talk to people about it, they can feel that from me, and I'm not intentionally trying to close a sale. Sometimes I am. I mean, we're in business, but that process in and of itself of building rapport and meeting with somebody and developing a relationship and talking about the pricing and the service, and that entire time they're feeling the passion from me. That is the sale. That's what people are buying when they work with me, and the same thing with you. They feel that.
I 100% agree. People buy based on that emotion that they connect with, and then they justify it intellectually.
Right.
Oftentimes people will buy from you hoping you're not lying, right? Oh my gosh, cybersecurity, I know I need it. I hope he's telling the truth. Oh my gosh, sales training, I sure hope this will work, right? And so they buy before they have the belief. So it's very important that we have it. And then they move from being a client to an advocate, which is better than a client. In other words, they brag about what you're doing. They stop keeping you a secret. And then you don't have to sell as much because you're being warmly referred in. Now, doing that is way harder than talking about it, which takes me back to that other word, try. So play along with me, Matt. Try to raise your hand as high as you can. No, raise it just a little bit higher.
Ready?
All right, now raise it a little bit higher. Okay, see, now I asked you to raise it as high as you could the first time, and you said, all right, I'll try. Right? And then I said, raise it a little bit higher, and you found some more.
That's right.
And that's another Navy SEAL thing that they talk about all the time. When you think you're out of energy, you got 40% left in the tank. And that's what most people say, well, I'm trying. Really? Right? I mean, if you're going to try, yeah, you've got to believe that there's always a little bit more. There's always something I'm missing. You got to stay aware. You got to stay curious. Where can I get a little bit more energy? Where can I find a little bit more juice in that lemon? What can I do as a side hustle right now? Maybe I could be working from home. Maybe I could work at Home Depot on the weekends. But it's that mindset.
It is the mindset.
When Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns went out of business, guys making $1 million a year had no job the next day. Do you think they went and tried to work at Home Depot? Nope.
Hell no.
They tried to find another job where they can make $1 million a year.
That's
now,
right.
We're going to lay off a whole bunch of people from Twitter next week, it sounds like, when Elon Musk takes over. And there's some people there that are making less than $100,000 a year. I guarantee you they're not going to go looking for jobs making $1 million like those Bear Stearns guys were. They're going to go looking for a job that their belief system tells them they're worthy of.
And here's the problem with that. The problem with that is, this is not my fact. But it seems to be a fact of what's going on around us. There are going to be several million people out of work getting laid off in 2023. The Fed is designing. That's what they're doing. They need that to happen to take care of their problem that's going on. So when these people begin to get laid off, it's probably going to be all levels. What are they going to do? They're going to go look for a job, like you said, making the same thing they were making. But that's not what's happening around us. People are going to be laid off because businesses are concerned about the unknown. So they're trying to get costs under control. They're not going to hire somebody and pay them more than they feel that they're valued at. Everything is shifting right now. And if that mindset doesn't shift, people who do get laid off, they have two choices. You can continue to look for a job and maybe not take the salary you were getting, or try to figure out a way to be of value based on whatever skill you have, where you can deliver that to somebody and take control of how much money you're making, because you're delivering something that's yours to deliver to somebody else. You decide what you're going to charge them for. You keep the money. It's called being an entrepreneur, and it starts with just you. If you're in marketing, then put an ad out, consult, get 10 clients. You're probably going to make more than you were making working for the company you're working for.
And decide what your skill set is, and then go for it. But you will perform in a manner consistent with what you believe you're capable of.
That's right.
Right. So if you let's say you have no skills, right, and you're a young person, you're in your 20s, I highly recommend you join the Marine Corps, right? Or if you're fat and out of shape, join the Air Force, right? I mean, pick a service that's appropriate for you. They'll pay for your education. You'll get some skills. You might hate it, but you'll become a better person the entire time you do it. Now, let's say you're too old to go in the military, right? And you're living in Florida. I don't know if you heard about that Hurricane Ian that just whacked the west coast of this country, right? But if you've got no skills at all, and you could go and rent a dump truck, they're going to be doing trash removal, junk removal off of the Fort Myers Beach and Sanibel and Captiva Islands for the next 2 years. There's an unbelievable amount of work to be done over there.
You're recognizing an opportunity. That's what we talked about a little while ago. Like, there are opportunities, and even in the worst of times, the ability to recognize the opportunity is so key. That's a great idea. Actually, we should hire 10 people. You want to go in on that?
Yeah, why not? Let's find out what people need and then bring it to them, right? That's matter of fact, my
Absolutely.
youngest daughter was worried when I quit my job. She's like, "Dad, I'm in college. You told me you're going to pay for the University of Georgia," which was, by the way, I got a free hat and a shirt out of it, but it's an expensive school if you're out of state. And so she was worried, is now a good time to become a coach? And so I try to put her at ease by saying, look, baby, if we have an Armageddon and there's only beef jerky and water, your dad's going to coach people with beef jerky how to trade for water, and people with water how to trade for jerky. That's when you get that mindset. What are we looking for? And then you go and find it.
And that's what people can take into. Well, that's one of the messages I wanted people to take away from this episode is there really is always an opportunity. It's just whether or not you're able to see it. And if your mind is focused in the right place and it's not clouded by the vibrations of negative thoughts, you can see opportunity. You can hear opportunity when you listen to people talk. And again, you work with a lot of business owners, and I suspect that you've met some who came to you because they wanted to increase their sales, that they were taking control. They were probably apprehensive, maybe a little fearful of joining the group sessions with you and having to speak with these strangers, and the whole thing could be unsettling. However, the choosing to put yourself into an uncomfortable, unknown situation, knowing that down the road the outcome of that is you are exposing yourself to something that's going to help you avoid exactly what you're afraid of, which is not having enough money. Right. So it's like that mindset shift is like, get in there and get through 1 or 2 calls, be uncomfortable, and then all of a sudden you're like, wow, this is great. You're excited. That excitement turns into money. Is that what you see with a lot of people?
Let me oversimplify it, right? If you show up on time, you do what you say you're going to do, and you're courteous to other people, you say things like please and thank you, you are so far ahead of everybody else looking for a job. I deal with these. I've got a plumbing company in Pompano Beach now. The owner is a fantastic human being, and his biggest problem is getting his guys to show up on time. Right? It's unbelievable. So maybe you don't have the personality to be in sales. That's fine. You become an apprentice. Become an apprentice of sales. Shadow Matt. Shadow myself. Right? Become an apprentice plumber. Become an apprentice home builder. Start by being the guy that drives the truck. Matt and I are hiring now for a new business doing junk removal in Sanibel Island, for goodness sake.
I drove a truck for 2.5 years. I loved it. 14 hours a day. It was great.
You think about it, like you could apply if you're a minority or you're a woman or you've got anything going against you, you get preferred lending status nowadays. Use that to your advantage. Go and buy 10 big dumpsters or start with 1 and rent it to people. Here's what I mean. I'm going to put this dumpster on your curb. You fill it up yourself. Call me when it's full and I'll come remove it. That's a business. And they need that business over on the West Coast. And, let's face it, look at the shape of Florida. Hurricanes are not going away.
Right.
They've been whacking us for thousands and thousands, probably 10,000s and thousands of years.
But it's totally unrelated, but I saw, I read an article. I don't believe a lot of stuff I read, but this was from a reputable science periodical. I thought because of the shape of Florida that the Gulf of Mexico was just from billions of years of storms going, hitting it. The Gulf of Mexico is a result of a meteor hitting the earth, and that's why it's so perfectly round. I mean, it's perfect for a storm to come in there, but that's a result of a meteor, the Gulf of Mexico. I didn't know that. I learned that 2 weeks ago.
Did you see that on TikTok, or is that real?
No, it was real. It's a proven. It's not a theory. It was a proven. I mean, maybe it was a theory that was proven to be true. That's still not true. I don't know, but it read like it was true, and it was a science periodical, and it was very convincing with all the stats. I'm like, oh my god, I thought it was from storms.
Yeah, me too. So I guess I just learned something.
Who knew? By the way, I could be totally wrong, and I was reading something that was totally made up. Who knows?
I saw that NASA exercise where they shot that meteor.
Yes.
Armageddon, just move it off course. I'm like, hey, I think we're going to need a bigger one if that meteor carved out the Gulf of Mexico.
Remember the movie with Bruce Willis? Wasn't that the whole point of the movie, Armageddon, right? Yeah. Where they landed on a rock and they blew it up. Who knew? 20 years later, we'd be doing that for real.
What an opportunity that would be, though. We could do anything. We wouldn't have to worry about all these houses and roofs and stuff, right?
We have to wind this down, man.
Really?
Yeah, we do.
Joe Rogan goes for like 3 hours. Where's your stamina?
Listen, actually, I already missed the meeting I was supposed to be on. We probably could go for another hour. You know what the thing is? I was hoping to get today, and I think I didn't get as much of it as I would have liked to because I spent too much time talking about your background. But you have unique perspectives on and some of them are like, it's okay to fail. It's not okay not to try. Define what's enough. I'm looking at my notes. People don't aim like that. I've never heard anybody say that. Actually, I heard it said different ways, but the way you explain how important it is to aim actually took us how to aim and shoot a gun. But it makes sense. And I know you didn't mean this when you, in the context of what you were saying, but you did reference reinvention. And it is important to be able to reinvent yourself, especially during bad times. And that's a message, like, take away from this. Bad times don't have to be bad because somebody else says they're bad. They can be good. They could be opportunistic, and they could be a time to reinvent yourself. And that's an important takeaway from the show, as is your future is your choice. These are all things you talked about. Your future is your choice. It may not feel like that at any given moment, because of emotions running high and low or back and forth in you and things that are happening immediately in your vicinity. But your future is your choice. And it's important to map it out. It's important to think about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And it's not going to be a straight line. It's not going to go the way you thought. It's going to go all over the place. But in 3, 4, 5 years, if you put a plan together and you have a vision and you just take some action and do some of the stuff that's going to get you there, you'll get there some way. You'll end up there. I've lived that. It's happened for me over and over and over.
Can I give you one more quote? One more
Don't
quote.
live in the past. All right. I'll give you one more quote.
This is from David Sandler. And what he said was, it's not how you feel that'll determine how you act. It's how you act that will determine how you feel. If you're waiting to feel good before you take the action that's going to give you a better chance of success, you're going to be waiting a long time. Take the next reasonable action and the feeling will find you. The emotion will follow the action.
So
right?
True.
And by the way, that's neuroscience too.
So
first,
true.
we decide first we have the hair stand up on the back of our necks. We have a physiological response. And then we decide we're afraid. First we tremble, then we're afraid. First you get sweat in the palm of your hand when you're about to do a podcast with the famous Matt Rosenthal digging in, right? And then you decide, I'm nervous. Well, all you need to do is, back to change what you believe, reframe. Ooh, that might be activation energy telling me I'm about to bring it to Matt.
The same chemicals that your body releases that create a feeling of fear are the same ones that you when you feel excitement. It's the same chemicals. It's only your brain that's telling you which one it is because of how you're processing the circumstances at that moment. I didn't make that up either. That's something I read, and that's probably true.
Yeah, I think it's true. You're reacting to your choice.
Different
people react differently to fear, don't they? It's weird.
Well, right. So it's a matter of like what you think, what you might be, what may cause anxiety or fear or worry in you may cause nothing. I may get excited, and it's that's a whole other show, but that's very powerful. We didn't get into behavior, into DISC, and I think we are going to do another show if you're willing to come back and talk about that, because we talked about a lot about what mindsets people could be in, but how to get in those mindsets is an entire other conversation. How do behaviors play into making money? How does understanding other people's behaviors play into outcomes, understanding that. And that is a whole other conversation, which is super, super interesting to me. Behavior analysis and DISC.
Let's do a series, Matt.
Let's do a series. We'll do one on each of them. So that's 4. So you usually have on we don't have it here because we're not using Zoom, but you usually have your behavior type in your like in your name tag, and you're an IS. I remember that because I see it every week when I do training with you. Mine is primarily D, which stands for dominant, and I have a little bit of others. What's interesting about that is if you knew me only as a D, you'd be like, how the heck is this guy able to do what he does? What we don't ever talk about, you and I, or with our groups, is maybe we do, and I'm not paying attention, but it's where personality comes into play, because your behavior is not your personality. Your behavior type is your behavior type. And so for me, my behavior type being what it is, actually could be a very bad thing in a lot of situations. But my personality, what you experience, fun, smiling, that's not my behavior. I mean, it comes across as behavior, but that's my personality. And you can change your personality, which is a whole other show. And
you
I
can
have.
modify the way you communicate with other human beings to create an environment where they're more comfortable and therefore more honest. Well done.
So the reason I'm saying all this, and you said everything you said, and this is to everybody who's watching or will watch this, the point of the show every week is to inspire and motivate. It's really, you're watching us have a conversation, but I hope, and I know Tim hopes, that you're inspired somehow, motivated, and that you do take some action. I mean, we talked about so much. Watch this a few times. Write something down. Get yourself to a place where you can take control of the outcome going into 23, bad economic times. But let that be an opportunity to set yourself up either to maybe find another job, to handle your current role differently, and to look at that differently, and to really move yourself forward in that role. How to supplement your income with maybe something outside, a side gig. It's all in your control. The only limitation is what's up here and other people. And I just would say everybody has an opinion, and unless somebody's done what they're giving you advice on, if you're looking to be a real estate investor and somebody's telling you, oh, don't do that because the toilet's breaking and you have to call plumbers, don't listen to them because they don't own a damn house. You got to listen to people that have done it, that are giving you advice based on experience, and a lot of it. Other than that, they're just naysayers. So we try to bring those things out on the show. And Tim, you did a great job, man. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me, Matt. I appreciate being here.
Is there anything you'd like to share where people can contact you to talk with you about what you are doing, which I'm sorry, we didn't even get to really talk about your company. Now's your chance. Sell yourself in 30 seconds.
Wow. LinkedIn's the best way to see everything nowadays. You can watch other videos. So my name will be on the podcast, I assume, somewhere. But the name of my company is Making Luck, which is probably another podcast session in and of itself. The easy way to remember my email address is makingluck@yahoo.com. Right? That's how old it is. It was my first email, and with any luck, it'll be my last. So feel free to contact me, and we'll see if we can make some luck today or every day. And it's present tense, right? Making luck doesn't say I made some luck, and it doesn't say I'm going to make some luck later. It's an everyday behavior-based mentality. It's my mantra. And so that's the easiest way to get a hold of me. And if you want to dig in with Matt Rosenthal, call him. If you want to dig in with Timmy, then, man, makingluck@yahoo.com is the best way to get me.
I love it. And yes, so all of your information is going to be down below. Email, phone number, website, LinkedIn, anything you give us, it's going to be down below. And it'll be out there. What's the expression for posterity? I think that means forever. Until YouTube shuts us down or takes us off, you'll be out there.
I'll try not to say anything that would trigger that.
No, please don't. So listen, thanks again. I really appreciate it. And because this is such a cool, fun, important topic to me, and because I know that it will help people, I do think you and I are going to do a few more, and maybe we'll turn it into something else. Maybe we'll start doing some lives, some LinkedIn lives and Facebook lives. We can help a lot of people actually over the next year or two. You and I know because we've done it. We've used these tools. We've used the mindset. And I'm learning from you every week, and every week I learn more, and I put it into action, and it helps me to influence other people to decide to work with us, which for them I know is a good thing, but they come to their own conclusion, and that's because of what you do. Because of what I learned.
That's the way I like to look at it, right? If you want to go on a journey, Matt and I'll go with you, and we'll empower you to figure out a way to help yourself. No sense in us jumping in and trying to help. Right? It's a game, and it's fun to be in the game with other people taking it seriously and trying to move forward somewhere. If you want to deal with the past, they got other people for you.
Love it. All right, my friend. Thanks again. Appreciate it. And we'll finish off with this. And I'm glad you were able to fulfill this at the end of every show. I hope that the person I spoke to was humble, which you are, and a hustler, which you are. You really, you're out there, you're working your butt off. And so to everybody out there, that is key. You have to do the work. You got to be humble, and you've got to hustle if you really want something to happen. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.